Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm doing another reading recap. This month it was a pretty weird combo of books. The first one was something that actually really helped me out. The second one was a little slice of life book. The third one I was really hyped for, but it kind of got too bizarre and not in the good way. So let's get into them. Actually, but before we get into the books, I just wanted to say it was really fun last reading video, responding to all your guys' comments. So feel free to comment. I'll reply to all of them. It was really fun. So let me know what you guys think. So the first book that I read this month was Hope and Help for Your Nerves by Dr. Claire Weeks. And I actually talked about this book during my vlog, my weekly vlog. I was reading it for a little bit, but just a little summary of what is inside of this if you didn't watch that vlog. This book was written by a Australian psychologist, and throughout the book she basically breaks down what anxiety is, and it's basically just a guide how to recover from anxiety. And it was written in the 1950s, maybe the 1940s. It was published in 1989. So it's like an older book, but actually a lot of the info on the inside was super relevant. Basically, the book is broken down into Dr. Claire Weeks explaining what anxiety is, how it can manifest physically, and then gives strategies how to overcome it. And I thought it was super useful starting out with just defining what anxiety was, because I've always had anxiety, I thought, but I've never experienced physical symptoms of anxiety. So it was really helpful to have it outlined by someone. And I know I do trust friends and family or my doctors that I've went to and talked about it, but I don't know, it was just really refreshing the way that she spoke about it, super pragmatically and matter of fact. I thought it was really good and it was very approachable to me. So she started off by defining it, and then she talked about various physical symptoms that you can have, which I thought was so useful. If you're a person that experiences anxiety physically, this book totally gave me peace of mind, because I just thought the world was ending. I thought I was doomed. Everything I was feeling, I thought it was some big health related crisis that I was experiencing, but turns out no, it was just anxiety. So then she goes on to explain that basically people with severe anxiety, or who find themselves in this cycle of adrenaline, have an injured nervous system, similar to how someone with a broken arm or a physical injury would have an actual broken thing. And in those cases, often we give ourselves grace to heal, but when it comes to anxiety, a lot of the times people don't give it time to heal. She goes on to explain ways to stop yourself from re-injuring your already sensitized nervousness. I think she calls it second nerves or second fear. Basically, it's the fear of being scared, which often these people find themselves in adrenaline cycles and they can't get out of it. So yeah, she explains how to approach that to get out of it. And her method is face the fear, accept it, float by the fear, and then let time pass, which is her strategy she talks about in the book, which I thought was super helpful. After reading this, I feel those sort of key points were really driven home. I will say that the first half of the book was very accessible to me and relatable, but the second half, which goes more into depression and other types of manifestations of anxiety like OCD or obsessions, I didn't find it super useful. But definitely the first half of this book was so invaluable to me. I feel I've not maybe fully recovered from my health anxiety and anxiety, but certainly I have gotten way better at managing it and facing it, understanding what it is, and just floating past it, letting it go by. I think if you're someone who just has anxiety or depression, this would be a super helpful read. Maybe not the whole thing, but there's definitely bits and pieces throughout it that could be very useful for just about anyone. Definitely would recommend this book. I feel this is honestly a 5 out of 5 for self-help books. I really loved it. Super good. Recommend it to everyone. 5 out of 5. The second book that I read in April was Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. This book was super good. Now, I did think that I was gonna love it, but it just definitely was really good. I thought this was gonna be on the same level as, for me, I read Ready Player One when I was much younger, and I love Ready Player One because I'm a big video game fan. So this book is about game developers, and I thought that I was gonna like fall in love with it the same way that I did with Ready Player One, but it was still very good, but it just was not the same at all. So if you like Ready Player One and you're expecting something like that, it is not that, but it's still very good. The summary of this book, it follows. This book has like a slice of life, kind of like Ghibli-esque vibe to it, at least to me when I was reading it. It's not as like fantastical as Ghibli stuff, but to me it had like the same quality, at least in the first third of the book, in terms of like dreams and like childhood innocence and things like that. The plot of the book follows kind of like a throuple. It starts as a just like a couple, but then it becomes a throuple. Sam and Sadie, and they're the two like main characters, and they basically meet at a very young age at a hospital, and their shared love of video games bonds them, and then they just sort of grow up, and their paths kind of diverge and then cross again multiple times throughout their life. And the book follows them from a young age up and through their adulthood, and follows them as they are developing video games, which was fun to read about to me. But I will say that about halfway through the book, I started to get this suspicion that when those two, Sam and Sadie, became a throuple, and Sam's roommate, Marks, sort of like joined the trio as they were beginning to develop video games. In my head, I was like, okay, this is either going to actually become a throuple, and that's going to be like the drama of the book, or they're going to become a couple, but it's not going to be Sam and Sadie. It's going to be Sadie and Marks. And I was like, if it becomes that, that's low key. That's low key what I was predicting, and like low key would be the boring route. For a while, the book was not going that way, but then a little bit after the halfway point, I feel like it started to go that way. And I was like, bruh, it's literally like, this feels so stereotypical. Like your best friend ends up with your like childhood love, whatever. And the book explores love and like different kinds of love. So I thought that it was valuable to have that conflict, and in having it happen like in relation to Sam and Sadie, the main characters. But when it did ultimately happen, I was like, this is so exactly what I expected. But then there was a big twist. So then it kind of like worked out, and I was like, okay, this is good. For that, like, I don't know, 40, 50 pages of stuff, I was like, okay, this is very predictable. And I kind of wish it didn't happen, although I see how it was valuable. So maybe I am glad that it happened, because the ending of the book, this is like major spoiler. I mean, everything before was already a spoiler, but this is major spoiler. Marks passes away unexpectedly, and it kind of is both a point of the plot that sends Sadie and Sam further apart, but it also ultimately is what brings them together. And I think that this recurring theme of like friendship, creativity, love, and what that can look like throughout different stages of life and for different people, I just thought that that was really impactful and interesting to read about. My only other major critique of the book was that it did kind of annoy me that because you're third person omniscient, like you're jumping between characters, it did annoy me that you were seeing like the different main characters be like, oh, if only the other person told me how they actually felt, or like things like that. I was like, it just kind of felt like a overdone thing. I don't know. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just too critical, but it just felt like I was like, guys, you guys are besties, just like say how you feel, just talk it out. But they weren't just talking it out. They like especially were not talking it out. And that was kind of the whole point of the book, I guess. Whatever. I mean, it was good. I really liked it. I think overall, I'm rating this book a 4 out of 5. Maybe a 3.5 out of 5. I don't think I would read it again. I mean, I might read it again, but definitely not anytime soon. It was still super good though. I think the only thing was just that it kind of was a little predictable, and towards the end I was getting low-key triggered by the main characters like not talking to each other. Like that was kind of annoying. But yeah, overall 3.5 out of 5. And the third and unfortunately final book that I read in April was Bunny by Mona Awad. Mona Awad. This book I was super hyped to read because one of my favorite YouTubers, new favorite YouTubers, Melissa, was talking about it. I think because there's another, like there's a sequel coming out from the author, and I love Melissa, and like her vibes are very good, so I, you know, her like recommendations, I'm like, okay, this is gonna be valid. And I knew going into this book that it was gonna be weird, and I also knew it wasn't gonna be like what it seemed. So going into it, the plot of the book is, and it's like very confusing, so this might not make any sense. But the plot of the book is that the main character, she just goes to like, she goes to an elite school for a Master's of Fine Arts program in creative writing, I believe. And in her creative writing class, there are these four other girls that are called the bunnies. Well, she calls them the bunnies because they call each other bunny. Like, they're always just like bunny this, bunny that, bunny like whatever. Samantha is the antithesis of the bunnies. Samantha is very like edgy, goth vibes, and the bunnies are super like girly pop, like bubblegum pop vibes. So like they're opposites, whatever. Anyways, the book starts off with Samantha and her best friend, Ava. They're like just two like goth girls, like two peas in a pod being emo together. Shortly in the book, after Samantha establishing that she hates the bunnies, she ends up a part of the bunny circle. They invite her to their like little get-togethers, and ultimately she ends up kind of being indoctrinated into their cult, and she finds out that the bunnies basically are somehow holding these seances to conjure up boys, but the boys are like sort of Frankenstein vibe. Like they can't really function fully. Like sometimes their hands are messed up or their body parts are messed up. And the goal of the bunnies is to create these like boys, but as actual like living boys. And they call the like messed up ones their drafts and like their darlings. And we find out the reason that the bunnies switched up on Samantha and invited her to their like little group is that they realized that Samantha's best friend Ava is not a real person. She is a creation from Samantha. Samantha like unknowingly had created Ava out of a bird, and like she's not a real person. But the bunnies were like, "Oh snap, Ava is like a fully working person. She can like do her own thing. She doesn't like have anything wrong with her. So we need to invite Samantha because Samantha can really make these boys like for real." So then the whole like last final act of the book is the bunnies ask Samantha to make a boy. They thought that she failed, but she didn't fail. But they thought she did at first because the bunny, oh, and I didn't even mention, they're called bunnies because they take like a bunny and they make it explode, and then that turns into the boy or like the whatever. So when Samantha's trying to do this, her bunny doesn't explode, it just like hops away, and then they all go outside, and then there's this boy who's like sussy, low key, but her bunny didn't explode. So they're like, is he a real boy? Is he not? And then the final act just follows like everything falling apart. And this is when you find out that Ava's not real. Like up until this point, you don't know the intention behind the bunnies, like the girls, and like why they ever included Samantha. But like throughout the second act and like the third act, Samantha's grip on reality is like really loose. And as a reader, this is where it just became so bizarre and almost like not enjoyable anymore. Like I was into the fact that it was kind of like a weird, like mind bending read, but it just became so bizarre that I felt like the plot was like lost almost. And that's not to say that the author is a bad writer at all. I definitely think that the author is very skilled, but I don't know, I just felt like the plot got too mixed up, and like, I don't know, for me, it kind of made it not enjoyable. After reading the book, I like I didn't really have any strong opinions other than I was like, oh, this was kind of a dud. It like became too weird and like, I don't know. But I was reading some analysis on the book, and a lot of people think that, or like a common interpretation is that the main character, Samantha, is maybe has something wrong with her, like she's schizophrenic or something. And a lot of the events of the book didn't actually happen. Like it was just her living her life, but like having these visions or hallucinations about like what really was going on. And after reading that that was a common analysis of people, I can see how that is true, but it kind of doesn't make any of the book more satisfying or like make it resolve any better. I still feel like there was a lot of potential here for it to be super strong, and I do think that the author's writing carried like the actual writing of the book. But in terms of like plot and stuff, I don't know, for me it just got too messy. And like maybe I just don't relate. Like the book is definitely geared towards like a female audience because that's the main character and sort of the whole world and like her experience as a female. So maybe I'm just not relating to that. I don't know. The like schizophrenia thing, like it was definitely interesting, and the ending was ambiguous, which kind of lends itself to like the mental illness read of the book. But I don't know, for me, it was just too much. Unfortunately, it was just too much. In terms of my rating, I think I'm gonna give it a 2.5 out of 5. I definitely think I'm not ever gonna read this book again. I'll probably read the sequel. Yeah, I think unfortunately for me, Bunny, this is not. This is the end. This is the end of Bunny. So now, to get into the books that I didn't read but were on my TBR for this month. And I'm not gonna blame Bunny, but I think that I really slowed down when I was reading Bunny, and so I didn't get to the other reads. But these are the 3 books that I read in April, and what I was planning to read after Bunny was The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I don't really know what this book is about. I just know that it's like a dystopian future and there's a second American Civil War. I don't really know what else about this book other than that it's like a classic, but this was on my TBR, so it's definitely going to be on my TBR for next month. The last book, which was on my TBR, but I was not thinking I was actually going to get to it, was The Will of the Many. I wanted to read this book because I really like Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn trilogy, and I was really into the like epic fantasy genre. So I heard that this one was really good too, so I picked it up. I didn't really think I was going to get to it, but I just had it on hand in case I did get to it. Yeah, this is definitely going to be on my TBR for next month. So these are all the books that I read and had planned to read in April. Overall, it was a good reading month. I wanted to kind of branch out from my fantasy realm and read some other things like the self-help book, Tomorrow, not really fantasy, fiction still, but whatever. And then Bunny kind of looped back into fantasy a little bit, but it was mainly just fiction and kind of horror. Overall, it was a good reading month. I'm excited for next month to get into The Handmaid's Tale and The Will of the Many, and I'm not really sure what else is on my TBR, but I guess you'll see next month. If you guys agreed with anything or had any other comments, especially if you guys have read Bunny and like have thoughts on it, please put them in the comments below. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching my April reading recap, and I'll see you next month with my May reading recap.